Hey, Fanboy Nation.
This is your pal Daffy Duck, and you're watching.
We're watching Fanboy.
A fanboy, etc.
Fanboy Nation.
Dot, I assume Tom.
Mark, it is a pleasure to talk to you about Charlie Hustle, the matter of Pete Rose, and the matter of Pete Rose. We'll throw it out there from the get-go. Does Pete deserve to be in the Hall of Fame even after accepting the conditions of, not being able to because of sports betting?
I think that's a great question, and that's kind of what I'm trying to pose with the series. I didn't get into making this film in order to defend Pete or create some sort of propaganda to try to force Major League Baseball to change or the Hall of Fame to accept him. I wanted to tell a full story, a kind of warts and all story, and allow Pete to be confronted by things in his life and to answer questions that maybe he's not asked a lot, and lay it all out there for an audience to decide what they think about Pete. I got into this because, I think the big question is, what are we supposed to do with these guys? How are we supposed to feel about them? They make us feel so many emotions during their playing career. And then Pete, of course, with the scandal, created another whole set of emotions. And a lot of, as a sports fan, a lot of our lives are kind of, they're enhanced by following sports, whether it's the heartbreak or the joy, right? And so when it gets to late in their lives, what are we supposed to do with this guy? He's not going to be the only case. You have some other baseball players who are not in the Hall of Fame who did remarkable things. And so I think the same question is going to be asked about them.
Johnny Bench in the documentary was like, look, he broke the rules. Shoeless Joe Jackson's still not in. Those are things that we can touch upon very briefly from the first episode because we want everybody to watch all four of them. Pete is in the WWE Hall of Fame. I don't know if that's considered a consolation, but being friends with Vince McMahon at the time kind of helped.
Yeah, I think he's probably in, or could be in, several Hall of Fames the way he's lived his life. And he's an entertainer. He was an entertainer on the field. He's been an entertainer for the last 4 or 5 decades off the field. So he enjoys the sound of applause, and I think he may have heard more applause from sports fans than anyone else on earth, to be honest.
I have friends from Cincinnati, and when I said I get to talk to you about your documentary regarding Pete Rose or your docuseries, the very first question was, did you get to talk to Pete too? Like, he is a demigod almost in Cincinnati, yet hated in 49 other states. Is it because he's the local boy that made it, or is it because he just drove everybody else nuts with his work ethic and playing style?
I think it's a little of both. I mean, I think he's loved in other parts of the country as well by people who may have ties to him or who again had emotions around him when they were younger or a child or a kid and they were following baseball. Pete was such a big star, like not just in baseball, in sports. Pete Rose was one of the leading sports figures of the time. We're talking about the early 70s, middle 70s, late 70s. This is not when social media doesn't exist. There's only a few channels. You can only see so much baseball on television, and he was the guy. But you're right. In Cincinnati, he's pretty revered. It is like stepping into another world when you're with Pete Rose in Cincinnati.
Every time a documentarian makes either a documentary or a docuseries, you learn something about yourself while focusing on the subject matter. What do you learn about Mark Monroe while making a documentary about this guy who not only had a legendary career, but a gambling addiction?
Yeah, I bring it up about the emotion that we have about these guys. I think I kept trying to see what I would feel, how I would feel about him. And I'm a humanist at heart. I think if you spend time with people, you grow to like them. And I think it's hard to reconcile some of his actions and some of what he said publicly. So that doesn't mean, though, you can't kind of, admire what he did on the field. And I think everyone has to come to terms with what they think about Pete Rose, and that's why I did it. I have my own thoughts about it, but I don't want to share them. I'd rather let the film speak for itself.
The series is fantastic. You broke it off into 4 hours with this near, God, 50 years of 60 years of public, persona. And then we meet Pete Rose Jr., his son, and how this affected his career, or presumably affected his career. And that locker room, this is the only real spoiler, Pete Rose Jr., Ken Griffey Jr., Eduardo Perez, like all of them are in the same locker room as children in Cincinnati. And now 2 of the 3 end up in the major leagues. One possibly because of reputation wasn't allowed to, as the sins of the father get carried over onto the son. That's power in the level of athleticism, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know what the special ingredient is. Hal McRae also went. He was in the part of those kids. It certainly was a very special, unique environment, right? And I think maybe what they got to see or to understand is that it's still just baseball, and being around these huge stars of the game, they saw them on a very personal, human level, right? And they got to, basically take it all in osmosis, right? Not just how to play the game, right? But how to behave, how to be a pro athlete. I think that goes a long way. Eduardo Perez, who is fantastic in the series, he told a story about being a young teenager, and basically understanding from Pete how observation really is the key to moving on in the game, how you can observe what's happening in a way and really understand the game at a deeper level. And he's told that story on television as an analyst, and it gets me every time. I just think that the power of being around people who do something exceptionally well, it does rub off.
Yeah. I do want to touch upon this, and another small spoiler, but you'll see it real quick. The monkey. Right. We had cameras back then. Why are there no photos of the monkey? How true do you think this story is? Or is this like, a WWE type spin? And I mentioned them again because he is in their Hall of Fame, trying to get people intrigued in the youth of Pete Rose.
I believe in the monkey. I think there was a monkey. I think his grandma had a monkey. I think they weren't very big on cameras. He's from the west side of Cincinnati. Not working class, blue collar is pretty appropriate for that area. I'm not sure they took pictures of the monkey, or the monkey would allow his picture being taken. I learned that from Leslie Visser. She had been told the story of the monkey and didn't know whether it was true. I had to go back to Pete to pepper him about questions about whether the monkey was actually real, and he swears that it is. And they named the monkey Pete. Now imagine being a kid and your grandma names a pet monkey after you. Like, it's pretty, you and your father. Like, it's nuts.
Well, there was a moment where I almost thought he was named after the monkey.
It could have been. Yeah. Exactly. But depending on the timing and how long the monkey lived.
Yeah. In the documentary, you don't shy away. He does freely admit that he was cocky. He still has that bravado of, look, I was Mr. Cincinnati. Charlie Hustle I took as a positive. It wasn't a dig. Like, very Andrew Jackson-esque. And when I say Andrew Jackson-esque, like, he was the first Democrat, and they called him a jackass. And he's like, all right, that's the logo of the party. And, today we still have the donkey as the logo of the Democratic Party. And Pete is still kind of the face of Cincinnati in that regard, as Charlie Hustle.
I think Pete, he only has one gear, like, for the most part, and that's to go all out, and that includes, now he's 80, I think he's 83 now. He's still pretty intense if you want to sit across from him, ask him some questions. So the Charlie Hustle moniker, nickname, no matter how he got it, he grew into it and he owns it. Like, he embodies it, right? And I think it's part of your identity. This is not unusual, I think, with famous people who they have a persona, right? And eventually they kind of become that persona. It's part of their identity, who they are in the world.
Yeah. The way you whittle down, 50, almost 60 plus years into 4 hours is a feat unto itself, because there's so many legendary stories. There's so many, true stories, and then stories where the legend becomes even greater than the actual truth. How do you find the balance of that in 4 hours?
It was hard. I will admit that it was fun, but it was hard. And I wish, selfishly, I had bigger sections of baseball. These unbelievable moments of baseball. But baseball is hard to put on the screen and compete with some of the inner workings of Pete and the drama that's surrounding his life. So, I mean, I could have watched an entire hour on the 1980 Phillies Astros playoff series. And Nolan Ryan there, and the Astros got up big, and there were some crazy plays that happened as a baseball fan that allowed the Phillies to come back and move on. And I feel that was hard. That was hard for me. I'll put it that way.
All right, Mark, we got to wrap this up, so I'm going to leave you with this final question. Tell us who in your heart you want to win the World Series, and who do you think is actually going to win this year?
I am a Braves fan. I've been a Braves fan for decades, and I hope the Braves put it over on the Phillies this year as the wild card and do the same thing to them that they've done to us. That's all I'm praying for this year, then to march on to the series.
I love it. Charlie Hustle and the Matter of Pete Rose Part 1 and 2 will debut on HBO on July 24th at 9 and 10 p.m. And the final 2 parts will debut on July 25th. All 4 will be available on streaming on Max on July 24th at 9 p.m. Where can we find you on social media if we want to connect with you?
I hate to tell you this, I'm not on social media.
Smarter than the rest of us. Mark, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you so much.